Hello everyone, welcome to week 4. This is the second part of module 2 on graphs and the internet. Before we get into the lecture on the material, I want to go through some announcements. First, note that module 1 is past due. You can submit to Medium, be sure and tag your story here. Be working on that so you can get that in the near future. Module 2 assignment is assigned. We talked about that last week. It's due a week from today on September 29th, looking at graphs and the internet. I have provided you some code for building these graphs on GitHub. You can check that out. A couple of questions have come up about where to get data. Some people have asked about Facebook. I'll note that while Facebook has an API for access to data, its API now is heavily restricted as a result of a number of political and fallout issues from data leaks and essentially ethical concerns that the company has had and flack that they've taken for their cavalier approach to data and personal privacy of their users. So as a result, the Facebook API is pretty heavily locked down. It's not going to give you a whole lot of insight now. But social media doesn't have to be the main source of data for this project. You can look at Wikipedia, you can look at websites and how they connect to each other. You can look at routes to the internet, a number of different sources for material on constructing graphs from the internet. The next thing to talk about is the semester project. Everybody's feedback from their project proposals is now available in Canvas. If you want to go check that out, you see your grade and a PDF with the rubric filled out for points and anything that I took points off of and any comments that I had. If you have any concerns or you want to try and update your material as a result of my comments, you can do that in your semester project proposal revisions assignment. Essentially just submit an updated version of your proposal in the near future, send me a note, and I'll review it. And we can talk about this during our weekly meetups on this. So that's it for logistics for upcoming assignments. For this week, we're going to talk about 4 main objectives. The first is talking about centrality metrics, essentially how do we define importance in a graph. We've talked about PageRank before. We'll talk about some other methods here. Then we want to say or explore how we can take a graph of some form and extract clusters or communities from that graph. How do we actually identify groups of similar nodes in a graph? We'll talk about how to do this using the Gervin-Newman method, and there are many other methods out there as well. The third one we'll talk about is how we can violate some of the rules we've discussed with graph construction and have types of graphs that have actually 2 different kinds of nodes as opposed to the consistent singular type that we've talked about before. And this is called a bipartite graph, and they have some particular properties and things we can do with that. And then we'll talk about how we can use these bipartite graphs and some methods for exploring them to find ways to measure similarity in graphs, specifically using algorithms like the SEMRank algorithm you should have read about in the book. As with every module, there is a Module 2 discussion forum. You can go and post any questions you have about any of this. For next week, as we prepare to end the graph module and move it out of Module 2 into Module 3, we want to read Chapter 3 now. So this is sections 3.1 through 3.5. We talk about similarity and how we might measure similarity in text of websites or web pages, for instance, in contrast to the network structure kinds of similarity that we'll talk about today. So yeah, read Chapter 3, sections 3.1 through 3.5. Also remember, Module 2 assignments due next week. There's code for that, and your data collection report for your project is due in a couple of weeks. So this is 2 weeks from today. You want to be sure you're working on that, get some data collection going. Even if you have to tweak things about your project proposal, that's fine as long as you have some kind of idea for the data that you're collecting, where you're going to get it, how you're going to collect it, these kinds of things. This is part of the lifetime of the project. Be sure you're making progress there. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll post on any of the discussion forums that we have.